Hey y'all, how's it going? And welcome back to another video. My name is Jasmine Dayton. I like writing books and I also like reading books. So today we are going to go over the books that I read for the quarter. I see all of these booktubers that are way better at reading than I am, and I am constantly just blown away at how many books that they read in a month. Which is really funny because I am a pretty fast reader, I'm just not a very consistent reader, so that is something that I am trying to work on for the new year. But this year, my goal was to read 12 books, which means one book a month. Today, I'm going to share with you what I read during my time in the first quarter. Some of these I have finished, some of them I still am working on, but I'm very close to finishing. First, I'm going to start with the first book that I finished this year, and that is Bringing Up Bebe. I think I'm saying that right. When I was in high school, I took French class, and all throughout my childhood, I have just loved France and loved that part of Europe. I've really been interested in the culture that they have, and so I was very intrigued when there was a book that came out specifically about parenting in France, which I have learned is a pretty common way of raising children in Europe in general. Being an American in the crisis that we have now of people not wanting babies, not being able to afford to have babies, and honestly just people having zero interest in becoming parents because there doesn't really seem to be a draw, there is an interesting paradox and shift where more people in France are having babies than they have before, which is the opposite situation than in America as far as what I understood from this book. And I think that something that I loved with learning about this is the ways that parents make parenting harder in America. Basically, the author of this book, she grew up in America, but she ended up marrying a man that was English, and so they moved to France together. And obviously, because she lived in a completely different country, there were completely different rules about cultural norms and societal expectations from mothers and children and the way that they behave and the way that they act. But she noticed right away that French children were much better behaved than American children, and they seemed more content and happy with themselves than children in America, who throw frequent tantrums and feel a very large range of emotions. I think that, in my opinion, some of these things are unrealistic unless you legitimately are living in France. But there are a lot of things that I feel like would be pretty easy to implement. And I think that as I have gotten older and as me and my husband have had more of the desire to start a family, I've really been trying to look into every single option of what would be the best way to raise kids and kind of thinking outside of the American bubble. I really enjoyed this read. I would recommend it. I would take it with a grain of salt in some situations. I think that there were a few lines in here that might make people feel a little bit sensitive, especially along the lines of like fat phobia. In France, they are very careful about their image, and a lot of times they can fall into diet culture, maybe not as severely as Americans, but I do think that that is a bit of a sensitive topic, especially for someone like me who at one point did have an ED. But I feel like that's the only thing that I would be careful about. And this is not anything against the author. I don't think that she did anything wrong with it, but she just is explaining the way that a lot of French mothers deal with, gaining weight while pregnant, and also the expectation of taking that baby weight off. I just wasn't the biggest fan of. Again, that could be a biased American opinion of mine. I'm the person who's giving the review of this video, okay? This is just all my opinion. But as far as rating goes, 4 out of 5 stars, really great book. All right, this next book I have been working on for a while. I did read a good bout of it while I was on my trip because I was flying in a lot of airplanes. I have this on Kindle so that I don't actually ruin the legitimate book. But that is The Hero of Ages by Brandon Sanderson. I'm so close to being done with Mistborn. If you guys remember, I made a video a really long time ago about finishing up the first Mistborn, and it took me almost a year to read. It does not mean that the books are bad, but just like, do you see this brick? Do you see this brick? And look at the letters. Look at the letters. Look at the letters. I am not one to ever complain about a book being long at all, but I need to set the expectation for myself that it's just gonna take me a little bit longer to read the book, which honestly, I'm totally fine with. This is one of my favorite series, and I just really don't want it to end. I am about 60% of the way through with this right now, but if any of you know what Brandon Sanderson books are like, it takes a little while to get through the first bit because he just is so detailed with his world building, and then once you get to like the top of the hill as far as the climax goes, it's like a rolling steep hill afterwards, or you can't put the book down. So I am anticipating that I will probably finish this book before the month is over. That is my hope. Obviously, I have nothing but high regards to Brandon Sanderson, to Mistborn, and this is the only series that I have read from him, and I already am a stan. I'm a part of the cult, and I'm proud to be a part of the Brandon Sanderson cult. So there's that one. This next book is also not complete yet, and I have really been running behind with reading this book. But this one is the Save the Cat writes a novel. I recently started doing a lot more research on the actual theory of storytelling and the science behind it, and I have learned so much from the 3-act structure, Save the Cat structure, as a basis of good storytelling, and I've been trying to implement a lot of the things that I have been learning from it to the stories that I have already written, and making sure that I have a good flow to the story, because I'm a pantser. I'm not very good at planning things out, but I feel like this is a really good in-between to have. There is at the very least some structure without me having to scene for scene break everything down, because I feel like the beauty of writing for me a lot of the time is kind of finding the story as I go. I have a basic beginning and end, but I rarely know what happens in the middle, and that's kind of the fun part for writing for me. I don't think I'll ever be a plotter, but I know that I need to step out of my comfort zone and do a little bit more planning. This book is pretty easy to read, and I like it a lot. I want to write a bunch of notes in it, but I also want to keep it nice. The struggle. So I actually have these little like clear post-it notes that I'm hoping to use more, but because it is a little bit more of a structured how-to book, it's a little bit less enticing to read for me. Not because it's bad, it's actually very good, it gives really great ideas, but it's a lot of information all at once. But so far, I love it. I think that I will continue reading it, and I think that I also need to be better about just keeping notes along with it as well. Save the Cat writes a novel. Every author should definitely go read this. And I would love any sort of recommendations of other books that would help with being able to hone craft for writers. I already am taking a few master classes from other authors, and that has been so incredibly helpful. But I would love some more options rather than just Save the Cat to make me a better writer. Okay, this one's a little bit controversial to me personally. For somebody who is neurodivergent, I have a really hard time with self-help books. I feel like for the majority of the time, self-help books are one of two things. They are written by white, straight, neurotypical men who got lost in the hustle culture and decided to capitalize on it and write books on it, claiming that they're for everybody, but them just spouting off what worked for them as straight, white, neurotypical men. Obviously, it's not going to work the same for everybody. And you notice that a large majority of self-help books are written by white people. You notice that? Kind of interesting. Or secondly, it's people who think that the only way that you can be happy in your life is if you have a lot of money. So I guess that I can caveat that a little bit by saying that it's also a bunch of women that are writing books that just say, you go, girl. A little bit of a pandering feminism, if you will, in my opinion. I had a really bad experience with You Are a Badass. I loathed that book, loathed it. She basically said, just do it, like 97 different times in the book. No thanks. I didn't learn a damn thing. So I had my doubts about this book because I figured that it was just going to be, once again, another white male. Look at him. Look at that guy. Poster child for self-help books. And obviously he was not going to put any sort of like neurodivergence into play because this was not specifically a neurodivergent how-to book. So I basically wrote myself a note and said that I needed to take this book with a grain of salt. I was not allowed to feel guilty while reading it because this book was not written for people like me. And it did surprise me. Atomic Habits. Everybody knows this book, Atomic Habits. The weird thing is that this book is certainly written for neurotypical people. However, he also goes a little bit deeper into the reasons of why people make habits and what actually entices people to make these habits, which is pretty cool. And even though that doesn't apply to me as somebody who is neurodivergent or anybody else who is neurodivergent, in a weird backwards way, he kind of breaks down why it's so difficult for neurodivergent people to make habits. So I know that wasn't what he was meaning to say, but he ended up actually clarifying a lot of things for me. I wrote down a lot of notes, and I want to actually make an entirely different video about this book. But for now, I will simply say that it surprised me, and 70% of the information was actually quite helpful. 30% of the information, I would say, is a little bit specific to how men and neurotypical people work. But alas, that is simply the target audience most of the time. And now for the grand finale of books for quarter one. You know what time it is. It's Hunger Games, Sunrise on the Reaping. I cannot tell you guys how long I've waited for this book. I wanted this book rather than, what is it? Oh yeah, this clown, this one. Look, it's not her fault, okay? It's not Suzanne Collins' fault. She wrote a beautiful book. I just didn't care about Snow. I know, hot take, hot take. And the other side characters were likable. I don't know, I'm just not a POV enemy type of reader, so that's on me. Sunrise on the Reaping, it's perfect. 5 out of 5 stars. It's incredible. It's everything I hoped it'd be. It brought back all of the elements that I loved from the second book, which is my favorite Hunger Games book. I honestly think that throughout this story, Haymitch is a more likable MC than Katniss. I'm sorry, I said it. Katniss is really serious and she's kind of a downer sometimes. But Haymitch, even though he was in a very similar situation, still has the gall to be funny. Still has the gall to be at least somewhat relatable. And this is nothing against Katniss, okay? I get it. She has a hard life. And I'm not gonna blame her for that. I'm just saying Haymitch is the man. Now, the only thing that would make this better is if Suzanne Collins wrote about My Dear Finnick. Please, Suzanne, do it. Please do it. You've already written 2 books. Please do it. Please, please, please. I'll read it. Honestly though, I could read 73 more books that Suzanne Collins writes about the Hunger Games and love every single one of them. I feel like maybe some of the books would be a little bit boring just because for the most part the careers do win. I would love to see a little bit of kind of a twisted mind situation, like someone who is clearly being brainwashed by the Capitol and is successfully brainwashed by the Capitol, kind of like giving 1984 vibes, even though I hated the main character in 1984. I love 1984 and I hate 1984. It's a complicated relationship. I could go on and on about this book, and I know that so many people are writing reviews about it, but I'll just give you my little synopsis here. 10 out of 10, would recommend. Incredible book. It's everything that I hoped and dreamed it would be. Another book that I did read, but I had to return to the library and I am hoping to get back, is The Pain Gap. And that is all about women in the United States and just the medical system across the whole world and how often women, especially women of color, end up being victims of the system. It was such an eye-opening book to me, and there were so many things inside of there that I didn't even realize were happening in the United States. You would think that because the United States is a first world country, technically, that you wouldn't be running into the issues that many do inside of the medical system, especially for women. Don't even get me started about how the entire westernized medical system is truly just engrossed in patriarchy, and even more so because a certain somebody who is a certain president is making it very difficult. But I don't want to get political. It's fine. I haven't finished that book. I got to, I believe, about chapter 3, but even from the little bit that I have read, I would highly, highly, highly recommend that book. It is so good. Can't believe I'm getting into real adult books. And when I mean adult books, I mean basically documentary style books. Never thought I'd be into that kind of stuff, but here we are. So that is everything for quarter one. Along with everything that I haven't finished in quarter one, I do have some hopes and expectations for stuff that I'm going to read for quarter two. I am going to be making this video so that I can kind of look back and see if I actually accomplished reading some of these books. All right, let me go get them. All right, here's the plan. Since I have already read Bringing Up Bebe Day by Day is a little short novella where it's kind of just little daily snippets of things that you could do with your child to encourage European parenting styles. 100 Keys to French Parenting is what it's called. I think that would just be an easy palate cleanser for me. It's already kind of a subject that I already read about, was already familiar with, figured that this would be an easy one. Another easy one is going to be Tracker by Bethany Votag. This is one of my friend's novellas. It was one of the first longer media books that I was able to buy from her since she did short stories for a long while, and I have been meaning to read it for 3 years. I think. Yeah, 3-4 years, something along those lines. Again, something short, something sweet, something easy to read so that I can really get back into the groove of reading more books, more quantity of books. And also look how gorgeous this cover is. It's like a picture of the mountains too. It's really cool. It's one of my favorite cover designs. Next one that I want to read, the rule I have made for myself for reading this book is I need to finish Hero of Ages Mistborn trilogy before I get into this one. I want to read Shadow and Bone. I was thinking about Six of Crows, but from what I have understood, Six of Crows is better than Shadow and Bone, but both of those stories kind of mixed together. I was thinking to myself, okay, I'm gonna start off with a mediocre book so that I'm actually invigorated enough to read perhaps the better duology. I know that that kind of sounds weird and backwards. I have not read this. I have heard a lot about it. I know that there is like a morally gray character in it. It's usually a hit or miss if I like series like this. I feel like I either love them or hate them, but I guess that we will see how this one goes. But excited to read it, excited to get on the bandwagon and understand what everybody is talking about whenever they hear about Shadow and Bone stuff. These two were somewhat random picks, but also have somewhat of a system to them. I'm trying to get through as many books as I can for the ones that I already own before I buy more, a reader's plight. And I was told by one of my friends that I would really like this book. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. And that is Crime and Punishment. Isn't this a beautiful cover though? So this book is red, and the way that I have my bookshelves organized over here is that series are at the top, and then as you go down, then it goes into color order. So this is basically the first color that was in there. I figured I would start with that. And I've also been meaning to read this one for a while. Am I a little concerned that my friend thinks I'll really like it? From what little I know, kind of, but I also understand why he thinks I'd like it. I get it. And the last one, which was more of a spinning wheels of fate situation, is The Count of Monte Cristo. Now this guy, also a pretty big brick, so I am going to try and be kind with myself on this one. Oh, but... yes. Sorry. Forgot you were still here. I don't know much about The Count of Monte Cristo, except for it's an incredible book. That's all I've heard about it, and quite frankly, that's all I need to know about it. So hopefully, if I have these 5 books that I am going to read by the end of next quarter, which will be beginning of June-ish, I might give myself a couple of weeks, just like I did this time around. But other than that, those are my first quarter reads. Thanks so much for watching this video. If you guys liked this video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up, and I would love to hear about your first quarter reads. If you like reading or writing, I also have a bunch of plans and a bunch of stuff that I am hoping to do with this channel. I know that I haven't been very good at posting, and I have plans to change that. Sayonara, you guys, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.